Emma Turner had always believed her life was stable, quiet, and safe. She lived in a peaceful Oregon neighborhood where the sound of wind through pine trees felt like a comforting routine. She had a steady job as an interior designer, a home filled with colors she chose with care, and a son, Caleb, who was the calm center of her world. Her marriage to Aaron had been through ups and downs, but she always assumed the foundation was strong enough to last. She never imagined it could break in a single evening. The day started normally, with Emma moving through her tasks in a steady rhythm. But that night, something unusual happened. Aaron left his phone on the kitchen counter and stepped outside to take a call. It wasn't a call that bothered her. It was the way he walked out, rushing, voice low, eyes avoiding hers. A small, uneasy feeling settled in her chest, the kind that whispers without proof. She tried to ignore it, telling herself she was overthinking. She had always trusted him. She had always believed trust was their strongest point. But when the phone buzzed again and a message flashed across the screen, her eyes moved toward it before she could stop herself. She didn't plan to look, her heart just reacted faster than her mind. The name was unfamiliar. Curious, confused, she picked up the phone. There was no password. Aaron never used one at home. She expected nothing. She expected maybe a work message or a simple reminder. Instead, she saw a conversation filled with short messages, simple but intimate in ways that made her chest tighten. No explicit words, no graphic content, nothing that could be called offensive or inappropriate by itself. But the emotional closeness was undeniable. He wrote like someone who shared secrets. The tone was soft, warm, almost tender. The kind of tone he hadn't used with her in a long time. The kind that once made her fall in love with him. Emma stood still, staring at the screen as if her breath had stopped. The words weren't loud. They weren't dramatic. Yet they felt like a quiet storm rising inside her. She read a message that ended with, "I miss talking to you." Just that. Simple, yet stronger than a confession. It was the emotional betrayal that hit her, the private world he had shared with someone else, the conversations that should have belonged to their marriage. Her hands shook. She placed the phone back where it had been and stepped away from the counter as if it might burn her. It wasn't anger she felt at first. It was confusion. A deep, slow confusion that felt like sinking into water without warning. She tried to breathe, but her chest felt tight. She tried to stand steady, but her legs felt unbalanced. That was when the front door opened, and Caleb walked in, throwing his backpack onto a chair like he always did. He was 20, tall, gentle-eyed, and carried the kind of calm energy that made people feel safe around him. He had inherited Emma's quiet strength and Aaron's confidence, but he used it differently, softer, kinder. He paused the moment he saw her. Emma had not said a word, yet the pain on her face was enough for him to understand something was wrong. He stepped forward slowly, as if moving toward a wounded animal. "Mum?" he asked, voice soft, steady. "What happened?" Emma swallowed hard. She didn't want to fall apart in front of him. She didn't want her son to carry the weight of her heartbreak. But the truth felt too heavy to hide. Her lips trembled before she could speak. "It's your father," she said, voice barely above a whisper. He isn't who I thought he was." Caleb's expression softened instantly. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need them. He simply moved close and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. His touch was warm, grounding, like an anchor pulling her back from the storm. "You don't have to explain anything right now," he said. "I'm here. You're not alone." Those words broke something inside Emma, not in a painful way, but in a relieving one. She didn't sob loudly. She didn't collapse. But one tear slid down her cheek, and that was enough to release the pressure inside her chest. Caleb pulled her into a careful hug, the kind that didn't need strength, only presence. For a moment, she let herself lean on him. She let herself feel supported, protected, and understood. And in that quiet closeness, she realized something unexpected. She wasn't facing this heartbreak alone. She had a son who had grown into a man capable of giving her the comfort she once gave him. But as she stood there, letting the evening settle around them, she didn't yet know how much she would need him in the days to come. She didn't know how deeply the betrayal would shake her life, or how far the emotional aftershocks would reach. All she knew was that everything she thought she understood about her marriage had cracked open, and the pieces would not be easy to put back together. Yet, even in that painful moment, one thing felt solid: Caleb. The steady presence at her side. The quiet strength she didn't know she would depend on. The unexpected support that would carry her through the heartbreak she was only beginning to feel. And somewhere deep inside, a fragile hope flickered. Maybe she would survive this, because she wasn't facing it alone. The morning after discovering the messages felt heavier than Emma expected. She woke up before the sun, lying in a bed that suddenly felt too wide. The silence in the house was thick, like it was holding its breath. She tried to sit up, but a dull ache pressed against her chest. A kind that wasn't physical but felt just as real. She stared at the ceiling, wondering how life could change overnight without a single warning. She finally went downstairs, hoping the familiar routine would calm her. The kitchen, usually warm and bright, felt cold. Every corner reminded her of years she had believed were honest. She tried to make coffee, but her hands felt clumsy. She set the mug down and leaned against the counter, gripping its edge as if it would keep her from falling apart. Caleb walked in a few minutes later. He had stayed up late, sitting quietly in the hallway the night before, just to make sure she wasn't alone. He looked tired, but there was a softness in his eyes that made Emma feel less fragile. "Mom, did you sleep at all?" he asked gently. "A little," she lied, her voice thin. Caleb didn't push. Instead, he stepped forward and began making breakfast, moving with easy familiarity: eggs, toast, something warm, something simple. He didn't treat her like someone who was broken. He treated her like someone who only needed a little help standing again. She watched him in silence, surprised by the calm confidence in his movements. "You don't have to stay home," she said quietly. "I'll be fine." He looked up, meeting her eyes with a seriousness she rarely saw in him. "I know you will," he said. "But not today. Today I want to be here." There was no argument she could make after that. His presence felt grounding, like a hand steadying her when the floor began to tilt. As they ate breakfast, Emma felt the weight inside her shifting, not disappearing, but becoming lighter, because she wasn't carrying it alone. She didn't tell Caleb every detail about the messages. She didn't want to burden him, but she spoke enough for him to understand the betrayal was emotional, deep and quiet. After breakfast, Caleb suggested they go for a walk. Emma almost said no. She didn't want to face the world, but something in his voice felt reassuring, so she agreed. They stepped outside into the cold Oregon air, where the breeze carried the smell of pine and distant rain. The grey sky matched the heaviness she felt inside, but walking helped her breathe again. They walked along the river path near their home, a place they used to visit when Caleb was little. Back then, he would run ahead, skipping stones into the water. Today, he walked beside her, matching her slow pace. "Mom," he said softly, "I know this hurts, but you don't have to figure everything out right now." Emma nodded, but her throat tightened. "I just don't understand how he drifted so far away without me noticing." "It wasn't your fault," Caleb said. His voice was steady, quiet, but full of conviction. "People make choices. Sometimes they're selfish. But that doesn't mean you weren't enough. Those words hit her harder than she expected. They felt like a gentle truth she hadn't allowed herself to consider. She had spent the whole night wondering what she had done wrong, where she had fallen short. Hearing her son say she wasn't to blame made her chest loosen. Just a little. They sat on a bench overlooking the water. The river moved slowly, its surface reflecting the muted sky. Emma stared at it, letting the calm motion settle something inside her. "I don't know how to start over," she admitted, voice trembling but honest. Caleb leaned back, hands in his jacket pockets. "Maybe starting over doesn't mean throwing everything away," he said. "Maybe it just means choosing yourself in the places where you forgot to." Emma turned to him, surprised by how much wisdom he carried. She remembered him as the boy who used to ask endless questions, who used to follow her around the house with toys in his hands. Now he was speaking to her like an equal, like someone who had grown into his own strength without her realizing it. "You're making it sound easy," she said, a faint smile breaking through her worry. "I'm not saying it will be easy," Caleb replied. "But you don't have to do it alone. I'm here, for as long as you need me." The sincerity in his voice made her eyes sting. She blinked, fighting back tears. She didn't want to cry again. She didn't want her son to see her falling apart. But the emotions were too close to the surface. Caleb didn't say anything when her eyes grew wet. He simply placed a gentle hand on her back, slow and steady. That was enough. That simple gesture told her she didn't need to hide her pain. She didn't need to act stronger than she was. As they walked back home, something inside her shifted again. Not repaired, but less shattered. She could breathe deeper. She could think more clearly. She could imagine surviving the days ahead. Later that afternoon, she found herself rearranging a few things in the living room. Small adjustments that made the space feel like hers again. Not theirs. Hers. It was the first time she had done something for herself without thinking about how it would affect her husband. When evening came, the heaviness in her heart hadn't vanished, but it wasn't crushing her anymore. She felt tired, emotionally drained, but she also felt the tiniest spark of strength returning. She didn't know what the future looked like, but as she watched Caleb making tea in the kitchen, offering her a warm smile, she realized something important. She didn't need to have everything figured out. She just needed to take one breath at a time. And she wasn't taking those breaths alone. The weeks after the betrayal passed in a strange mix of pain and slow healing. Emma tried her best to return to her routine, though everything felt different. Her home didn't feel like a place she lived inside. It felt like a space she was trying to rebuild. She spent her mornings working on her design projects, trying to use creativity as a way to steady her thoughts. Some days she succeeded. Some days the sadness returned the moment she stopped moving. Caleb stayed close during that time. He didn't smother her with attention, but he was always near, checking in, making sure she ate, offering quiet comfort whenever the silence grew too heavy. His presence became a shield against the loneliness that tried to creep in during the evenings. Emma didn't say it out loud, but she knew she wouldn't have survived those early weeks without him. She didn't expect anything new to enter her life. She didn't even want anything new, not yet. Her heart still felt fragile, and her trust was still bruised. That life often brings people into our paths when we least expect it. And that's exactly what happened one cold, windy evening. It started with a simple knock on the door. Emma opened it to find Daniel Hayes, her neighbor from down the street, holding a medium-sized brown package in his hands. He was around her age, maybe early 40s, with a gentle face and warm eyes that looked like they understood quiet struggles. She had seen him before in the community store, walking his dog, watering the plants outside his porch, But they had never gone beyond polite greetings. "This was delivered to my house by mistake," he said, offering the package with a small smile. "I thought I'd bring it over." Emma thanked him, expecting the conversation to end there, but something about Daniel's expression made her pause. He didn't look rushed or distracted. He looked open in a soft, unassuming way. Emma had gotten used to people avoiding emotional spaces, but Daniel's eyes seemed to hold patience. Too much patience for someone she barely knew. "It's been a while since I saw you outside," he said lightly. "Everything okay?" The question was simple, but it carried genuine concern, not curiosity, not gossip. A sincere human concern. For a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. She didn't want to share her personal pain with a neighbor, but something in Daniel's tone felt safe. "It's been a rough few weeks," she admitted, choosing simple words. He nodded gently, as if he completely understood without needing details. "Life throws storms at all of us," he said. "Just remember, storms don't last." The kindness in his voice touched her more than she expected. She gave him a small smile, one that felt real even though her heart was still healing. They talked for a few more moments, nothing deep, nothing heavy. Just two neighbors exchanging warm, easy words that felt surprisingly comforting. When Daniel walked back toward his house, Emma found herself watching him for a moment longer than she intended. She wasn't attracted to him, not yet. But something about the short interaction soothed her, like discovering a small warm light in a cold room. Caleb came downstairs a few minutes later and noticed the slight change in her expression, the faint lift in her mood. "Who was at the door?" he asked, opening a soda. "Our neighbor, Daniel," Emma replied casually. "Just returning a package." Caleb raised an eyebrow playfully. He stayed longer than a package drop-off usually takes. Emma narrowed her eyes at him in mock warning. "Don't you start." Caleb laughed, not pushing the topic, but his teasing smile lingered. He wasn't suggesting anything serious. He simply noticed something she didn't want to admit yet. For the first time in weeks, someone other than her son had made her smile without effort. That night, as she prepared for bed, her thoughts wandered back to the conversation. Not because she felt romantic interest, but because she couldn't remember the last time a simple interaction had made her feel understood. It felt strange, unfamiliar, but quietly comforting. Over the next few days, Emma found herself noticing Daniel more a friendly wave from across the street, a polite greeting when their paths crossed, a short conversation while collecting mail. He never crossed any boundaries. He never pushed for information. He simply offered the kind of easy warmth that felt safe, respectful, and surprisingly reassuring. Emma didn't expect anything from these interactions. She wasn't even thinking about the possibility of something more. Her heart was still learning to stand again, and romance was the last thing she was ready for. But she couldn't deny the truth. Talking to Daniel felt different. It felt like a reminder that the world was still full of good people, gentle people, people who didn't cause pain, but simply shared kindness. One afternoon, after a long day of work, Emma saw Daniel walking his dog past her house. He lifted his hand in a small wave. She waved back, feeling a soft warmth inside her chest. It wasn't attraction, it was hope. The quiet kind that doesn't overwhelm, but gently reminds you that your heart is still alive, still capable of feeling something beyond sorrow. Caleb noticed again, of course. He didn't tease her this time. Instead, he just smiled in a way that told her he was happy. She was finding little sparks of light in her life again. Emma didn't know where anything was headed. She didn't even want to think about the future yet. But she did know one thing. She was healing. Slowly, gently, one day at a time. And sometimes healing didn't come from grand gestures. It came from small moments, small conversations, and small reminders that life still held warmth, even in the coldest seasons. And without realizing it, Emma began to wonder if life was quietly preparing her heart for something new, something soft, something unexpected, something she didn't have to rush into. For now, though, she held on to the simple truth. For the first time in a long time, she felt a little lighter. And that alone was enough. The truth about Aaron finally came out one quiet Friday afternoon. He walked into the house with a tired look, as if he had already decided something before stepping through the door. Emma didn't expect a confrontation, but she sensed a shift in the air the moment he entered. He didn't sit down. He didn't try to soften anything. Instead, he simply announced that he wanted to leave, saying it in a calm, almost indifferent voice that cut deeper than anything she had read in the messages weeks earlier. There was no argument, no dramatic scene, just a cold distance in his tone, as if the years they had spent building a life together had faded into something he barely remembered. Emma listened quietly, her hands resting on the back of a chair to keep herself steady. She realized something surprising: she wasn't falling apart. Not this time. The pain was there, yes, but she wasn't drowning in it. She was breathing, standing, listening with a calm strength she didn't know she still carried. When he finally left, closing the door behind him, the house felt strangely peaceful. Not empty peaceful. For the first time, the silence didn't feel painful. It felt like space. A space she could rebuild her life inside without fear of it being disturbed again. Caleb came home a few hours later and immediately sensed what had happened. He walked over to her without speaking, wrapping her in a gentle hug. Emma leaned into him, not because she was weak, but because she finally allowed herself to feel relief. Not relief that her marriage ended, but relief that the uncertainty was finally over. "You survived it, Mom," Caleb whispered softly. "You didn't let the pain destroy you." Emma closed her eyes, letting his words sink into her heart. They were true. She had survived not because she was emotionless, but because she had allowed herself to feel, to grieve, and to keep moving. Her son had stood beside her every step of the way, never letting her fall too far. The following weeks moved quickly. The divorce papers came through, and Emma signed them with a steady hand. She wasn't signing away her past. She was signing toward a future she could shape on her own terms. Caleb sat beside her, quietly offering support. When the final signature was done, she exhaled a long breath she didn't realize she had been holding. That night, she cried, but these were not the painful tears of heartbreak. They were tears of release, the kind that washed away the lingering weight of emotional wounds. Caleb held her gently, letting her cry into his shoulder without saying a word. Sometimes silence was the most comforting answer. As spring began, Emma threw herself into rebuilding her life. She redesigned parts of the house that reminded her of her old marriage. She changed the curtains, repainted the living room, rearranged furniture, and added new decor pieces she had always wanted but never bought. With each small change, she reclaimed her home. With each decision, she reclaimed herself. Her design work also flourished. Clients praised her more than ever, saying her ideas carried new warmth and depth. Little did they know her creativity was fueled by a heart learning to heal. One gentle moment at a time. Daniel remained a friendly presence in her daily life. He never crossed boundaries or pushed for anything more. Instead, he showed up in simple ways, waving from his porch, offering a warm greeting when he passed by, asking how she was doing in a way that felt genuine, not nosy. One sunny afternoon, as she was taking out the trash,